There's a certain kind of pressure that hits when you reach your mid-50s and finally sit down to calculate your retirement reality. Not the casual, "I'll figure it out someday" thinking, but real numbers. What you've saved, what you'll need, and how long it has to last. And somewhere in that calculation, a heavy realization begins to form. What you've built might not be enough. Not enough for the life you imagined, maybe not even enough for a comfortable one. And unlike when you were 30 or 40, this realization feels different because now time is no longer on your side. My name is Professor, and I want to show you something about retirement wealth that most people don't understand until it's already too late. Most people believe retirement is simple. You work for decades, you save consistently, and then you retire and slowly withdraw from what you've built, hoping it lasts as long as you do. The goal is to use it all, to enjoy it, and ideally end with nothing. That's the traditional model. That's what most financial advice teaches. But here's the truth that changes everything. The wealthiest retirees don't slowly drain their money. They continue growing it. And the difference between someone who retires with $500,000 and ends up with nothing versus someone who retires with the same $500,000 and ends up with over $2 million isn't luck, inheritance, or perfect timing. It's something else entirely. It's a completely different way of thinking and operating, one that most people never even realize exists. Let me say that clearly. Retirement isn't about spending what you saved. It's about structuring your savings so they grow faster than you use them. Think about that shift. Most retirees focus on stretching their money, trying to make it last, cutting expenses, and living cautiously. They start retirement already in a scarcity mindset. But a small group of people approach it differently. Instead of asking, "How do I make this last?" they ask, "How do I make this grow while I'm using it?" Same starting point, completely different ending. Now here's the invisible line that separates these two groups. It's not the amount of money they have, it's whether they understand how withdrawal strategy really works. Most people think retirement is straightforward. Save money, retire, withdraw around 4% per year, and hope it lasts. That 4% rule is built on a major assumption. You're trying to preserve your money, not grow it. It's a defensive strategy where the goal is simply not running out. But what if the goal wasn't just preservation? What if the goal was multiplication? Let's look at the traditional approach. You retire at 65 with $500,000. You withdraw 4%, which gives you $20,000 a year. Add some Social Security, and maybe you're living on around $45,000 annually. You maintain your lifestyle. Your savings stay mostly flat if markets cooperate, and over time, your money slowly declines until there's little left. That's the plan most people follow. It works, but only barely, and only if nothing unexpected happens. But here's what almost nobody explains. That same $500,000, if structured differently, can grow into over $2 million over time. Same person, same starting amount, completely different result. Why? Because smart retirees don't just withdraw money, they allocate it strategically. Instead of keeping everything in one place, they divide it into 3 buckets. The first bucket is for safety and spending, around $100,000 in cash or short-term bonds, covering about 5 years of living expenses, roughly $20,000 per year. This money is stable and not exposed to market volatility. The second bucket is for income, about $150,000 invested in dividend-paying stocks, or REITs, generating roughly 4 to 5% annually, around $7,000 a year, which can either be reinvested or used when needed. The third bucket is for growth, $250,000 invested in stocks or index funds, left untouched for at least 10 years and allowed to compound. Now here's where things get interesting. While you're living off the first bucket, the third bucket continues to grow. At an average return of 8%, that $250,000 becomes around $368,000 in just 5 years. Meanwhile, the second bucket continues producing income and slowly increasing in value. When the first bucket runs out after 5 years, there's no panic. You simply refill it by taking some gains from the third bucket, which has grown significantly. And even after refilling it, the third bucket is still larger than when you started. That's the secret. You're spending money, but your wealth is growing faster than you're spending it. Over time, this creates a powerful effect. After 5 years, you may have spent 100,000, but your total portfolio could still be around 570,000. After 10 years, you might have spent 200,000, yet your portfolio grows to about 680,000. After 15 years, you've spent 300,000, but your investments are worth around 800,000. And after 20 years, you may have spent 400,000 while your portfolio exceeds 1 million. You've spent nearly your entire starting amount and still managed to double your wealth. That's not luck, it's structure. For this approach to work, there needs to be a mental shift. You have to stop thinking like someone who's running out of time and start thinking like someone managing a system. Most retirees panic when they see their balance drop after withdrawals. It triggers fear, leading them to cut spending and limit their lifestyle. But those who understand this system know that the first bucket is supposed to decrease. That's its purpose. What matters is that the growth bucket continues to expand. As long as it's growing faster than your spending, you're in control. This shift also changes identity. Wealthy retirees don't see themselves as people who are finished working. They see themselves as managers of their wealth. They stay engaged, adjust allocations, rebalance when needed, and remain active in decision-making. They don't stop thinking. They just stop doing work they don't enjoy. Another important shift involves risk. Many advisors suggest moving heavily into bonds for safety, but bonds primarily preserve wealth. They don't grow it. If you're likely to live another 25 to 30 years, preservation alone isn't enough. A better approach is maintaining a stronger allocation to stocks for growth, even if it feels uncomfortable, because over the long term, it protects you from inflation and supports continued expansion. Consider what happens during a market crash early in retirement. If your portfolio drops from 500,000 to 400,000, most people panic and sell, locking in losses. But with a bucket strategy, you're still living off cash, not investments. You don't need to sell anything. You wait. Let the market recover, and by the time you need to refill your spending bucket, your investments have already rebounded. Same market crash, completely different experience. In fact, downturns become opportunities. Instead of panicking, you can invest more while prices are low. While others are selling out of fear, you're buying with confidence. Over time, that difference creates massive gaps in wealth. There are also big strategic decisions, like housing. Many retirees stay in their paid-off homes because it feels secure, but those homes still cost thousands each year in maintenance, taxes, insurance, and utilities. On top of that, they lock away hundreds of thousands in equity that isn't growing. By downsizing or renting and investing the difference, that money can generate significant returns, potentially covering living costs while still growing your net worth. One of the biggest mistakes happens in the first few years of retirement. People overspend. They travel excessively, make large purchases, or financially support others beyond their means. Instead of withdrawing what was planned, they take out far more, weakening the system before it has time to work. Those who succeed treat the early years with discipline, allowing their investments to build strength, so later years become more comfortable. And here's something most people don't fully understand. Every dollar spent early carries a hidden cost. Spending $50,000 in your first year isn't just $50,000 gone. At 8% growth over 25 years, that's about $340,000 in lost future value. So the question isn't whether you should enjoy your money, but whether the experience is worth what you're giving up in the future. Retirement isn't the end of financial thinking. It's the beginning of a new phase where it matters even more. The difference between struggling and thriving isn't how much you saved, but how you structured it. Those who turn 500,000 into over 2 million aren't lucky. They're strategic. They separate spending from growth, stay invested, avoid emotional decisions, and treat their money like a system that needs to be managed, not a savings account to be drained. And the best part is, you can start applying this approach at any stage, years before retirement, just before it, or even after you've already retired. It's not complicated, it just requires a different way of thinking. And one day, when you're 90, when your portfolio is larger than when you retired, when you've lived comfortably without fear, and when you're able to leave behind more than you ever expected, you'll remember this moment.